Death and love together mated, watch and wait in ambuscade, at early morn or else belated, they meet and mark the man or maid. Burning sigh or breath that freezes, numbs or maddens man or maid, death or love the victim seizes, breathing from their ambuscade.
The fourth story, The Room in the Dragon Volant, is a break in the theme of the anthology. It, as well as Carmilla, is a longer novella instead of a short story, has absolutely nothing from Dr. Hesselius, and though it features references to supernatural folklore as atmosphere, it falls more into the down-to-earth thriller genre with similar elements of science fiction as Sherlock Holmes. Nevertheless, it is an effective bit of gothic horror, and works thematically as the story preceding Carmilla for featuring a similar femme fatale love interest. The story follows a spunky young Englishman named Richard Beckett, who travels to Paris in a misguided attempt to get rich quick through hustling people at pool. On the way there, he sees a carriage accident and decides to help out. The carriage holds two aristocrats, an old man and a beautiful woman. Characters we will come to know as the Count and Countess de Saint-Hilaire. Beckett never speaks to the Countess, but is intrigued, and acts on a romantic impulse to follow the carriage and find out more about her. He follows it to a hotel, gets a room for himself, and bribes the hotel staff to tell him about the other party. He learns a rumor that turns out to be untrue, that the Countess is the daughter of the Count from a first marriage. He shows his interest to her from afar, and she sings the eerie song Death and Love Together Mated, which he interprets as her flirting with him.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
She seems unhappy living with the Count, and he dreams about rescuing her like a chivalrous man, or stealing her away from an existing husband like a charming rogue. Unlike him, the reader knows that this is a horror story, so warning bells start to ring. Okay, whether or not the Countess is bad news, and she totally is, I think we should address whether or not it's reasonable for Beckett to track her down like this. It did make me raise my eyebrows a bit, but I ultimately think it's fine. It is outrageous, but not in a bad way. He is an exaggerated romantic ideal going against social protocols, which is something that works for the genre without excusing any disrespect of the object of affection or her boundaries. His following her and asking people about her isn't so different from Googling someone and reading their blog, which has no clear value in our modern social protocols. Some would consider it crossing the line, others wouldn't, and it's just hard to tell what people would think. It's sometimes called cyberstalking, but this label is also applied with a bit of frivolity. Beckett's actions really wouldn't be alien in a modern romantic comedy that most feminists would just accept with a shrug. And the character is far removed from the creepiness of the prince in Snow White, just jumping the wall to court someone he never met because he liked the sound of her voice. I think Le Fanu had more respect for women's boundaries than Walt Disney did 65 years later. Beckett makes friends with a local aristocrat, the Marquise de Omville, and they have some romping Byronic adventures together, while Beckett tries to learn more about the Count and Countess. He makes enemies with an aggressive French soldier, evocatively described as extremely pale because he lost a lot of blood in the Napoleonic Wars. And Beckett has an argument with him that escalates into a drunken brawl. The most disturbing adventure happens when he and the Marquise are drinking coffee, and someone spikes his with a fictional drug that's like a cross between ketamine and the Haitian zombie drug. He can't move and appears asleep, but he is fully conscious. The Marquise leaves him to nap, and then someone else comes in to search his belongings. Beckett can't see who it is. The man finishes his examination and leaves. Beckett comes out of it a while later, shaken. Incidentally, this drug is the reason why Dr. Hesselius cared about this story. A note at the beginning indicates that he cared about it as a doctor. However, what his thoughts on the subject, or that of any of his associates are, isn't stated at all. So it might as well be a completely different story. Beckett continues to pursue the Countess, who he learns is trapped in a loveless marriage with a much older Count, who married her only for her wealth. A clause in their marriage contract stipulates that the Countess's diamond collection belongs only to her, so the Count mercilessly terrorizes her in an attempt to get her to sign the diamonds over to him. Beckett falls in love with both the Countess and the desire to be a Byronic hero and rescue a damsel in distress. So he ignores some warning signs and moves into the Count's Dragon Volant inn, where he is placed in a room infamous for housing patrons who have mysteriously vanished.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
The Countess convinces Beckett that she wants to run away with him, and she gets him to give her all of his gambling money, and then she serves him a drink laced with a Haitian zombie date rape drug. While he's paralyzed, he learns that pretty much everyone he met since arriving in town was conspiring to cheat him out of his money. Not only is the Countess not really interested in him, she's a psychopath and plans on burying him alive. It's a very chilling reveal, with the conspirators completely dehumanizing him as garbage to be discarded. Fortunately, a cop is diligent enough to examine their coffin and its dead guy to make sure that they're on the up and up, and he figures out what happened and rescues Beckett. The Count is executed without a second thought, the Countess flirts her way into only 6 years in prison, and the Marquise just escapes scot-free. Sometimes that's just how it goes. Bureaucracy and corruption keep bad guys from paying for their sins. Rather distinct from the fate of Mr. Justice Harbottle, Beckett just stumbles out, grateful to be alive, humiliated, but wiser. The Countess is a femme fatale, French for fatal woman, and she is a cousin of Carmilla. Not literally, of course, but she is figuratively also a vampire. The figurative term vampire has fallen out of fashion, and is dimly remembered by the outdated American slang vamp, but it refers to a specific type of sexy woman who strings men along, but ultimately uses them up, like a vampire with her prey. The term stems from Rudyard Kipling's poem The Vampire, which describes a toxic relationship a foolish man has with a psychopathic sexy woman, which was inspired by Philip Burne-Jones's painting The Vampire, depicting an actual vampire woman feeding from a hapless male lover. Given that the painting was made prior to the publication of Bram Stoker's Dracula, it was almost certainly inspired in some part by Carmilla, so, full circle. Femme fatales are often used in misogynistic ways, but I don't think that is necessarily going on here. The main characteristic of a femme fatale is that she represents the whore side of the Madonna-whore dichotomy, and can't assume the Madonna role, so she is considered a broken woman without the ability to act as a wife. The use of a femme fatale stock character has a lot of capacity to get into moralizing issues of female sexuality, depicting sex as evil, and all sorts of conservative stuff that I just don't see here. Some women are psychopaths, and a lot of these will be Gone Girls, and they have as much legitimacy as any other subject matter to be written about. The Countess is evil, but I don't see her being demonized for her sexuality. She's just a Gone Girl doing as Gone Girls do. She's also far from the only evil one in the story, and is just one of many conspirators, most of which are men. It is feminist the way that she's treated as an equal evil power with her fellow conspirators, and it's feminist the way that only her specific evil acts are used to make the reader hate her, and she is ultimately an awesome villain. Given that she's a public domain character, there's nothing stopping anyone from writing her into another story, like a Dr. Hesselius TV show.